5 interesting things that happened in cybersecurity this week. Well, millions of websites are going to be listed as insecure. Another baby monitor gets hacked. USB chargers might be hacking you. Car remotes aren't really keeping your car safe in many cases. And we find out that people keep using the same stupid passwords over and over again, which doesn't keep you safe. All this on This Week in Cybersecurity with me, the Code Curmudgeon. We start this week with a story about Let's Encrypt, which is a certificate authority. So certificates are what help us create secure connections between different services. So for example, you want to buy something from a website like Amazon, and you want to make sure that the transaction is secure and encrypted so no one can spy on it and steal your data. So these certificates get issued, and the people who issue them, they have like a unique code that's used for encryption and decryption. And when they issue them, they try to make sure that when you own this domain, like CodeCurmudgeon.com, that you are who you say you are, so that you can be safe when you're on the internet. As it turns out, there was a bug in the software that they were using to help validate who the owners of these domains are. And because of that bug, they had to invalidate 3 million records. Essentially, some of the records were probably invalid, and some of them, many of them, were not. But they couldn't tell the difference, so they went back to the date when the bug first started. And it was only a very short period of time, actually. These guys do lots and lots and lots of business. But they had to invalidate 3 million website certificates, or HTTPS certificates. Might not have been websites, but essentially 3 million domains that had to get invalidated. So what does that mean? Why do we care? And the answer is that when you go in your browser to a site like Amazon.com, you expect to see that little lock icon in the corner. And that lock icon tells you that it's safe to do business. And if that lock isn't there, then you know your transaction is not encrypted and therefore can be spied on. So do I care if someone knows that I'm, buying a Code Curmudgeon mug? No. Do I care that they know my credit card and the little code on the back of my credit card? Yes. So it's going to cause a lot of chaos for a lot of people. If you're on a small site and you see this occur, like if it's a site you're used to doing business with, you're probably okay. If it's someone you've never done business with before, never trust it if the lock doesn't work. Just don't expect that. There was one other thing I wanted to mention, and I'll put some links down below, but there's a tool. It's checkhost.unboundtest.com, and you can put in the name of the URL, and it'll tell you if it's an affected domain name. So if you are trying to do business with somebody and want to see if this is the only reason, check that out. Again, I'll put it, like below. It should be here by now, and or it's down in the description below. Once again, we have smart cameras and baby monitors being hacked. This story is out of the UK, and it's basically done by some researchers who are showing people that, hey, it's really dangerous. These smart cameras and baby monitors are vulnerable to attacks. And I think they threw the baby monitor in there just to make it scarier. Cybersecurity is scary enough. You don't have to make it more scary than it already is. But there was one of their anecdotes or stories from the data they had gathered about a man hacking into a camera. They don't say it was a baby monitor, but talking to a young girl and pretending he was Father Christmas. So the question is, how are they getting in? In this case, the story is quite interesting, which is why we're talking about it today. That essentially they're coming in through either default passwords, like you bought a camera, you put it on the internet, and you never change the password, or coming in through just crappy passwords. You've got silly things like password or admin. And we're going to talk more about that in about 2 minutes. But just a reminder, if you're going to put these things in your house, make sure you don't keep default passwords. Make sure that you put good passwords, and make sure that you keep the firmware up to date. And that's basically all I can say about that. USB chargers, juice jacking. This article here is mostly about juice jacking, but anybody who knows me knows that I'm constantly fearful of the whole USB ecosystem. It has so much promise, but there's some fundamental flaws. One of which is that each USB device can be anything that's hooked up to USB. So I plug in something, I think that it's a memory stick, and it's really a keyboard. I plug in a keyboard and it's really a memory stick. The problem is that to make these USB things work, they have to have little microcontrollers in them that give them the logic that they need. And in fact, even the chargers, because the chargers have to be smart, have some little microcontrollers. And the USB flash drives that have memory, they have to have a controller to write the data to the memory. So it turns out that there's just lots of different ways to subvert the USB ecosystem, and you need to be careful of it. So the best way to do that is never ever plug into one of these USB charging stations like you see at the airport or other places. If you install them at home, that's different, but don't plug into public USB charging stations. Don't buy cheap chargers on the internet. Don't get free chargers at trade shows or pick them up off the ground or anything like that, because they can have code embedded in them and they might be stealing data, they might be installing malware. So be safe, buy good chargers from reputable sources. Don't pick up weird USB stuff off the ground and use it. We'll talk more about that in the near future. I'm going to do a whole thing just on USB and how it works and why it is that it can be subverted. Universal car remotes. I didn't even know that it was a thing. I mean, I knew that hackers were hacking various car remotes, and I know that garage doors have universal remotes and TVs have universal remotes. I had hoped, I guess I was willfully ignorant, that the car manufacturers were doing stuff that was enough different that in this day and age, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, but in this day and age wouldn't be universal enough to be universally hacked. There's a whole book by Stephen King, Mr. Mercedes. In fact, there's a whole series based on that book, but that's the one good one. And one of the mechanisms that's in the story is that the guy who steals the Mercedes is using this funny little device that he built. He's a nerd that works as a tech support guy and at a local computer store, and he cobbles together this device and off he goes. And there's a video here. Okay, so you can see this hacker built one of these devices. It works on lots of cars. He claims it works on any luxury car. I don't know why it'd be luxury cars and not any car, but maybe you can charge more. He's selling them for $9,000. I guess there's an upgraded model for $14,000. Don't buy these. Don't go steal people's cars. What can I say? Don't steal cars. Any luxury cars except for those that use frequencies between 22 and 40 kilohertz. Such as Mercedes, Audi, Porsche, Bentley, and Rolls-Royce, released after 2014. So, don't know how many cars it actually works on, but for sure it can work on some cars of different years, and there may not just be cutoffs. It may be that it works on 2010 through 2014, but not 2015 or something like that. Semicomcar, who's a really well-known, hacking authority, didn't look at the device itself, but he looked at the demo video and he understands the space and says that it's definitely reasonable to believe that such a thing could exist. So I don't know what to tell you. Lock your car, but it may or may not do you any good. So there you are. I guess the automotive industry needs to step up and take care of this one. So just something to think about. Right? We walk away from the car, we lock the door, and we feel safe. Maybe don't leave valuables in your car. Maybe that's the message for today. Passwords. I told you we were going to talk about passwords. Just a funny article, not about a specific hack, but somebody did some research to find out what passwords do hackers use all the time to break into stuff. And there's 5 of them, so I'll just put them right here in order. Number 1, admin. That speaks to me, it's a default password. Number 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 3, default. Again, it's a built-in. Number 4, password. Honestly, I'm shocked that's not number 1. And number 5, root. Again, speaks to some kind of a default password issue like we talked about with cameras just a second ago. So, same advice that I just gave you. don't use default built-in passwords with things. If things have a default password like your home router or your camera or whatever, change it. And don't change it to password. Use a long password. If you follow me on Twitter, you saw a couple of days ago I posted something about password recommendations, and we talked about that even here last week or the week before. I'll put a link to it. But make a long password that you can remember. It doesn't have to have a million funny characters that you'd have to write down, but make it long. Some long silly phrase, maybe it's a nonsensical phrase that makes sense to you, and change it from time to time. If you're using password, change it right now. Shame on you. So with that, thumbs up if you like the video, thumbs down if you think that security doesn't matter at all. Let me know in the comments if there's things you want me to cover, things you'd like to hear more about, and if you hear of interesting stories during the week, please hit me up on Twitter or whatever and let me know, and we can cover it in the future. In the meantime, stay safe out there.